You may be thinking, you're a bit late to the party on this one, buddy. And yep, damn right I am. I've been moving house and also exploring some opportunities towards the advancement of my career. I make no apologies, occasionally we need to do these adult things, no matter how lame they can be.
Excuse me? What do you mean you don't need to apologise? You spent the last few weeks playing Viva Pinata and singing Britney Spears to your son.
Okay, so maybe I do need to apologise. We did move house, I've just been slack, and distracted with corrupting my son's childhood with the guilty pleasures of my past. But at the end of the day, happy wife, happy life, or happy chick, happy dick, or whatever works for you, you know what I'm trying to say. The improvement of my family's quality of life will always come first. It was just a real kick in the balls that this was all happening during gaming's busiest week of the year. So with this video I want to sum up everything we know about the Division 2 based on the screenshots, developer blogs and streams, and of course the E3 conference. There is so much information that has come out over the last few weeks. I've tried to group it up and summarize it into easier to manage chunks, but I've also left some timestamps in the description. First and foremost, we have a release date, and as predicted, we'll be seeing the Division 2 on shelves from the 15th of March, 2019. To build the scene, I'll start with how the story has brought us through to the Division 2. I better put on my story voice for this part.
7 months have passed since a deadly virus hit New York City and the rest of the world, crippling the population. When the virus hit the Division, a unit of civilian sleeper agents was activated as the last line of defense. Since then, Division agents have been fighting relentlessly to save what remains. For the agents of the Division, the stakes are now higher than ever. Washington, D.C., the most heavily protected city on Earth, is at risk, leaving the entire nation on the brink of collapse. If Washington, D.C. is lost, then the nation falls. As a Division agent who has been in the field for 7 months, you and your team are the last hope to stop the fall of society after the pandemic collapse. As you arrive in Washington, you see that the civilians have banded together in settlements to rebuild their society, but their very existence is threatened. Work closely with them to keep them safe, and in turn, they will come to your aid and provide supplies and assistance to build up your base of operations, giving a deeper meaning to the people and the world around you.
As pretty much already stated, the Division 2 will be based in Washington, D.C. We'll be getting a 1-to-1 ratio representation of the actual city. In the original game, we were fighting through the narrow streets of Manhattan during winter. The Division 2 has us placed in an overgrown open world full of diverse environments, from flooded urban areas to historic sites and landmarks in the middle of summer. DC is more open and architecturally diverse than Midtown Manhattan, with a variety of unique districts. New York basically had 2 areas, business and residential. Washington has a lot more diversity, and about 7 distinctly different areas. On top of that, you also have the situation that nature has taken back the city. Each area plays differently and gives you a huge variety of situations. So in each area, you have to think about your loadout and what you need to achieve your goals. At this stage, the map is already 20% bigger than the Division 1, and it will continue to be expanded over the next 3 already announced Year 1 DLCs. One of the biggest things in the Division that had player numbers dropping from day one was the lack of things to do once they made it into the endgame. The Division 2 has been built with an endgame first mentality, further supporting the Division 1 statement of, the game only starts when you make it into the endgame. The developers have ensured that players will always have access to fresh, unique, and diverse activities long after completing the campaign. The Division 2's endgame will introduce brand new challenges, progression systems, unique twists and surprises, and 8-player raids. At this stage we really don't have too much information on raids, just that they will be replacing incursions and are designed for an 8-player crew and cater towards different specializations, builds, and group configurations. It's quite obvious the learnings that they've taken from the Division 1, as they're continuously ensuring the community that the endgame is there and will be strong from day one of the Division 2 launch. They're running with the phrase, the more you play, the more there is to do. Players will have access to a full year of free story-driven missions, map expansions, and new game features. The Division 2 is also getting new downloadable add-on episodes every 3 months that will build onto the story and content. Not a huge amount has been talked about on the activities that will be available at launch. Obviously we'll have the campaign missions and the briefly mentioned 8-player raids. Even the Dark Zone, the most iconic piece of the Division, has only been shown in a few screenshots. There has been some talks over new co-op activities, but something of note worth mentioning is the progression tracker. Anyone from the forums or Reddit can relate to posts like, "I just came back after leaving around patch 1. Where do I start?" The Division 2 will have something called the progression tracker. It's basically an assistant that proposes activities depending on your progression in the game and what your next milestone could be. Through this, you'll always have a clear list of activities that you can approach at any given time based on your progression and skill level. This should also help make the game more accessible and less overwhelming for returning players. One of the things that I was most concerned about was how the developers were going to handle the build depth and diversity with this new installment. Historic and recent events have shown that titles like this favour the casual route, often oversimplifying the game beyond the original concept. With the Division 2, it looks like they've taken the opposite path. If anything, more depth and diversity seems to have been added. Main stats. You still have 3 main stats, but they've been reworked. In the Division we have firearms, toughness and electronics. These have been replaced with armour, health and skill power. Health and skill power have been more streamlined to make them a little easier to calculate and understand, but essentially they're still the same as before. Armour, however, is a new main stat. Agents now have an armour bar above their health, and before any damage can be inflicted on their health bar, the enemy first needs to take down the armour. Medkits have been removed and replaced with the need to repair your armour plates. Replacing or repairing armour plates takes time and cannot just be done on the fly like with the old medkits. This aspect alone hugely changes the gameplay that we're used to. Firearms or DPS has been completely removed as a main stat. The developers felt that too much emphasis was being placed on that DPS number and how high we can get it. They stated that we were often comparing apples to oranges and that there were a large number of other options that need to be taken into consideration. Weapons still show the stats that we're used to, like damage, RPM and mag size, but now we can see information like accuracy, stability, reload time and even a damage drop-off chart to help you make a more educated choice when picking your weapon for the situation at hand. Specializations. Signature skills have been removed. I can't say I'm too upset with this, they've always had trouble keeping them balanced, and we often end up being a little bit too reliant on them with our builds. In the place of signature skills, they've introduced specializations. Once you hit level 30, you'll be able to select a specialization. These specializations will equip you with a powerful signature weapon and a whole new progression tree, including exclusive mods that will allow you to alter the way you play the game and help you further modify your build to your style of play. At E3 we saw the first 3 specializations. The Survivalist with an explosive tipped crossbow, the Demolitionist rocking a grenade launcher, and the Sharpshooter with a 50 caliber sniper rifle. And this is just to start with, there's been hints that they're going to be adding more as time goes on. It sounds like they're really trying to change things up with the builds, allowing players to fully invest into a class style of play. Also, it should be noted that after choosing a specialization, you're not stuck with this choice. You can switch between at any time. Vanity. If you love the Division fashion show side of things, you won't be disappointed. The developers have said they want to further increase the options for how players can have their own unique look and feel for their characters. Being that the Division 2 is based in summer, a lot more possibilities have opened up. There are even exotic gear sets that once all are equipped, you'll be given a very distinct look. And it's not just the vanity items, there'll also be a clear evolution between level 1 and level 30 characters. So as you're leveling up, you'll be gaining progression on your character model too. It should be noted that this evolution doesn't mean that your character is going to evolve horns or wings or the ability to fart fire or anything, more that it'll look advanced and further equipped than earlier in the game. When it comes to the gear, the slots are much the same as the Division 1. We still have 6 gear slots: mask, chest, gloves, backpack, knee pads and holster, and all pieces have mod slots. Something that's new is that each piece now has a skin/dye slot, so you can further customize your appearance. The biggest change to gear that we've seen so far is the introduction of gear brands. Brands is essentially a new form of gear sets. Every piece of gear has a brand associated with it. The brand is basically the gear manufacturer, the company that it was made by. The manufacturer has an impact on what type of stats are rolled onto the piece, but also the additional bonuses that are added when equipping multiple pieces from the same brand. So with specific brands focusing on different types of buffs, you'll likely find yourself leaning more towards certain brands that complement your style. These stats have been taken from the E3 demo and of course are subject to change. So what about gear sets? These aren't going anywhere. We'll still be getting gear sets in the Division 2. From what they're saying, it sounds like gear sets are the next tier after brand sets. Not much information has come out on these yet. As I mentioned earlier, the weapons now offer a hell of a lot more information when viewing them at a quick glance. Same as before, you can hold 2 main weapons and 1 sidearm. All of the same weapon types have been brought back with the addition of the new specialization weapons, though they have stated that there are new weapons currently in development. One of the biggest things to note so far is that weapon handling has been reworked from the ground up. I have a feeling this will make weapons considerably more difficult to handle, and that mods and buffs to stability will become far more sought after. Weapon mods. The weapon mod system has also been reworked. In the Division 1 there are clear best in slot options, and the use of mods outside of these options was few and far between. Instead of finding or buying mods, you instead unlock them as you progress through the game. For example, when you unlock a certain type of scope, it's available for all weapons it fits on. So mods no longer take up inventory space, they're just an unlockable option for your weapon. Mods also don't just give you a certain buff to a specific area anymore, they're there to modify your weapon now, not just an upgrade. The idea is that mods now can be used to tweak the weapon to your style of play, and that these tweaks also have a negative effect somewhere else. For example, if you are wanting to improve the accuracy of your weapon, this might also reduce the optimal range. Same as in the Division, we'll have weapon and gear talents. In the Division 2 there will be 2 different types: common, simple buffs like 15% headshot damage, and advanced. As the name suggests, these are more advanced buffs and they come with a requirement. For example, steady nerves. Destroying armor or weak points grants 50% weapon stability for 4 seconds. Requires no full auto weapons are equipped. The goal was to make the talents more accessible, but also have you work your build towards some of the more unique bonuses. On screen are some of the examples that were shown at E3. Weapon talents work in the same way. There are common and advanced talents. The only difference being that when you have a weapon talent on your gun, you'll get an augmented reality icon next to it that helps you track the talent and see that it's active. Here are some of the examples of the weapon talents we've seen so far. The way that skills work are more or less the same. You can have 2 equipped and there's a range of different options. However, the skills do appear to be upgraded somewhat. Some require you to target an enemy, and others seem to work better in tandem with the environment. One thing did stick out though: they're more powerful, but they require a lot more skill to use, and they're more interactive. The 4 skills shown at E3 were Drone, sort of like a turret but less stationary. This can be controlled remotely, but depending on the mod, you can set it as an assault drone to attack the nearest enemy, or a protective drone to look after a specific target. Chem Launcher, shoots various chemicals that disperse on impact. These chemicals could be explosive vapors, corrosive acids, or appearing nanobots. Hive, small drones are launched to cause devastating effects to targets within an area. A crowd control device, but also useful for attacking the weak spots of heavy enemies. Seeker Mine, much like what we're used to from the Division, but for the more powerful mods like Airburst, these require manual targeting. The gameplay has changed considerably in the Division 2. Learnings from the Division 1 had the developers focusing on the following areas: time to kill, destructible armor, agent armor. Lower time to kill. The Division 1 always had an issue with bullet sponge enemies. It affected the gameplay and how we approached each encounter. In the Division 2, they had the goal of speeding up the combat. Time to kill has been lowered for players and also the NPCs. Instead, the NPCs now have better reactions, better animations, and better armor. Destructible armor. Bosses and heavies will now have a feature called destructible armor. So rather than shooting these enemies in the head with 1,000 rounds, the goal is to take down their armor. Precision will be rewarded when targeting weak spots, and you'll literally be able to see each piece of armor being blasted off the enemy. Agent armor. As mentioned earlier, agent armor has changed. We now have an armor bar that takes all the damage before the agent health is affected. Medkits have been replaced by armor kits, and when using these new kits to replace armor plates that have been blasted off, agents are forced to take cover, as these take a few seconds to take effect. So rather than spamming medkits, you're required to handle things more tactically. When killed, agents still go into a downed state to be revived, but now there is a cooldown period. If dropped within this period, agents will immediately be placed into the full down state, unable to be revived. Civilians and enemy factions work a little differently in the Division 2. Civilians now have a key role in the Division 2. While the soldiers ran to their bunkers, the civilians have bonded together to fight back and rebuild society. You'll encounter civilian settlements that are under siege by enemy factions. They are low on resources and struggling to survive. Work closely with them to keep them safe, and in turn, they will come to your aid and provide supplies and assistance to build up your base of operations, giving a deeper meaning to the people and the world around you. Enemy factions. Unlike the Division 1, not all enemy factions have their same unit types. In the Division 2, NPCs are smarter and use more abilities. The only faction we've seen so far is the True Sons. The story behind the True Sons is that they're a group of paramilitary warlords who use their combat expertise and firepower to overwhelm their enemies. Led by a former JTF officer, they are smart and organised. Though, based on the JTF in the Division 1, I can't see them being too much of a challenge. They'll probably spend most of their time knocking each other out of their menu screens and taking position right in front of each other's line of fire. On screen are the True Sun unit types that we know so far.
Oh, there's a dude rushing through the plane. Guys. Yep, I'll see what I can do.
Just a few key questions that have repetitively come up in relation to the Division 2.
Yeah, hang on.
No character progression. There will be no character progression that will carry over to the Division 2. The Division 2 is a new game, a new character, and no progress will carry over. But through completing shield commendations, there are certain vanity pieces that will be included on your Division 2 character. Anti-cheat. Cheating, particularly on PC, has been a hot topic with the Division 1. While they aren't ready to talk about it, they've ensured that they know it's been a huge concern of the players, and that it has been a large part of the learnings they've taken from the Division 1. How they are addressing this is yet to be revealed, but they'd like us to know that this has been taken very seriously in the Division 2. No companion app. Unfortunately, no. We aren't getting a companion app for the Division 2. They've said it just isn't in the plans. They're focusing on the main game, experience, and post-launch content. In terms of inventory management, there's a ton of improvement, but for now they're putting all of their resources into staying focused on the game experience. But this isn't to say that a companion app isn't coming out later on. If we compare the information shown at E3 to the information we were given back when the Division was first showcased in 2013, I feel like they've really taken player feedback on board. This seems like a much more honest reveal, and if anything I think they've held back a lot to avoid the whole overpromise under-deliver situation we had last time. My biggest concern was the oversimplifying of the game to appeal to the masses, but they have more than addressed this, offering even greater build diversity than we have now. I'm being optimistic, but I've been burned by too many games over the last couple of years to get too excited. But I can say for sure that of all of the games that were showcased at E3, the Division 2 is the one I'm most looking forward to next year. I'll be picking up Anthem 2, but based on what was shown, I have a feeling that it'll just be another RPG-like game, like Destiny, which concerns me, because Destiny may be light on the RPG element, but everyone would agree, whether you hate the game or love it, that it has a very strong shooter mechanics that have been perfected since the early days of Halo. If Anthem is similar, and to be compared to Destiny, they're going to have a tough time, unless they're really bringing something completely new to the table. Anyway, this is probably more of a conversation for another video, so I'll end it here. Now that I've fully moved in, I hope to be a bit more active. My internet speeds are roughly 10 times faster than my last place, so I really need to put them to the test. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!